the Lake & Walker Knife Safety System, more commonly known as the LAWKS. That's what it stands for anyway, which is made by CRKT, which happens to stand for Columbia River Knife and Tool. They're very prone to using a lot of abbreviations in their creations, aren't they? Anyway, this is it on a CRKT eraser, one of my favorite knives ever. Very interesting. They don't make these anymore. Discontinued quite a while ago. But I just figured I'd give you a brief explanation as to what it is. It's this little knob you're seeing right here. It's a lock for the lock, essentially. It's kind of like a park brake for your car. It's already in park, but now you have another brake on it. So how does it work? Extremely simple. It's a thin piece of metal that acts as a potential obstruction. Yeah, no, sorry, there's some rust bits on here. I got this knife used. Who knows what happened to it. But if you move it up, here, move this. It just gets in the way of the liner lock. There you go. It's probably like a 1/16 of an inch right there. It's very subtle. It's a very subtle little obstruction that gets in the way of the liner. Now, they're a little different depending on which knife you get. That's just how this one happens to function. I think some of them get a little bit further in the way, but generally speaking, it's going to look something like this. It's a little piece of metal with a cylindrical knob on it that rests on the spine of the handle. And you can either turn it on or you can disengage it. There's no fixed positions it can go in, it just kind of freely moves around. This one's kind of more difficult to get to, but I kind of like that, so you can rub your thumb back and forth on the spine of the handle without it accidentally engaging on you. You have to purposefully engage it, but it's just a piece of metal that gets in the way of the liner. This is the locking mechanism. If you're not familiar, I'd be really surprised if you weren't, but it's the liner of the knife that is constantly in this bent position, and it's just freed when the space is freed up and the tang of the blade makes contact with it like that, as you can see. That's what locks it. But you can accidentally, or for some reason, add some force to this and have it disengage and have the blade close on you. The LAWKS gets in the way of it if you choose to do so. Now it is a lock for the lock. I cannot close this liner because there's a piece of metal in the way. What metal is it? It could be aluminum, could be... I'd be surprised if it was aluminum. I don't actually know. I looked around. I can't really find any info on it, but it's a piece of metal that gets in the way of the liner. That's basically it. There's also the auto locks, which is the exact same thing, only there's a spring that constantly keeps this in place. It's constantly bent up. So on some models that they have, you have to disengage that, hold it, as well as disengage the liner at the same time. Then you can close the blade. This is a manual locks, which means you can choose to engage it or not, which I think most people prefer. The auto locks has its advantages. If you're in a tactical situation, an emergency situation, you absolutely need, let's say, that second lock on there. You don't want to accidentally disengage the liner for whatever reason. It has its advantages. It's just a little bit trickier to close because you have to disengage two locks instead of one simultaneously. So that's basically it. It's very, very simple. It's like a safety for the locking mechanism. Now, the main reason I wanted to make this video, I wanted to bring up the talking point of some people see this as a total gimmick. Like, there's no point to it. It doesn't do anything. There have been some videos in the past of people really thumping on blades with the locks on there, trying to get them to disengage, and lo and behold, they did. They did get them to disengage. They broke them completely, and the liner still slammed shut on them. If you were to spine whack and put a lot of shock onto the knife, even with positive force going on the edge, having it shock the stop and having that shock wave rebound into the blade and then back into the liner, that's what can cause a blade to slam shut. It's going to be about abuse, not normal use under any circumstances, I don't think. But if you abuse the knife like that, or you're in an emergency situation and for whatever reason, let's say you're frantically moving around, you accidentally smack the spine into an object or something, that could disengage a liner. Liners notoriously are not the strongest locking mechanisms. They're fast and they're simple, very affordable, but they're not the strongest. They do have their advantages, though. So that's kind of what the point of the locks was supposed to be. Or is supposed to be, I should say. It's just a lock for the lock. Some people call this now a virtual fixed blade. Like, there's no possible way it can disengage on you. If you abuse it, it can snap on you. It can break. It's not, I would not call it a virtual fixed blade at all. It can break on you. Look how, you can just by looking at it, look how little that is. A very tiny obstruction in the liner. Now, if you're using this even hard use, and you're kind of just afraid about liner locks, don't want to disengage on you, that's good. It is good enough, though, despite it being so small. and not being that much of an obstruction, it still gets in the way. There's no way your finger's going to slip and you're accidentally going to disengage the liner anymore, even under really, really hard use. It's just not going to happen. Under abuse or thumping on it or trying to get it to disengage, yeah, it probably will snap on you. The LAWKS is not by any means a very strong lock for the lock. It's not a very strong safety mechanism, but it is a safety mechanism, which most knives do not have. They have a lock and that's it. They have no additional lock for the lock. So I still see it as useful. It is a safety under hard use, but under abuse or under spine whacking or anything like that, it could just slam close on you anyway. It could break. It's very minute. It's a very subtle thing. But that's all it really is. It's a subtle little lock for the lock. It's not meant to make the knife turn into a virtual fixed blade, despite what you may have heard from CRKT or from what you may have heard from people who have the CRKT knives that have the LAWKS on there. That's just how I see it. It's based on from what I've seen, other people's videos, other people's perspectives, etc. From what I've seen, yeah, it's not perfect. It's not going to turn it into a virtual fixed blade. It's just not strong enough. There is a locking mechanism that Cold Steel came out with that I will argue does turn the knife into a virtual fixed blade, but that's for another video. So anyway, there you go. There you have it. It's very simple. It's literally just a liner for the liner lock. It's like a liner lock for the liner lock. That's it. And it just strengthens it further. It definitely makes it stronger. It's just not foolproof. But still cool. You don't lose anything by having it there. I still like it. I still like to use it when I can. It's a safety for the locking mechanism. You don't lose anything from having it, so hey, why not? That is the Lake & Walker knife safety system.